Hi, everybody. I'm Malcolm Staves. I'm the Global Vice President of Health and Safety at L'Oreal, and I'm also co-founder of SOTE, Safety on the Edge. And welcome to SOTE Talks. I'm really, really happy today to be able to say I've got Jennifer McNelly with me, CEO of ASSP. And I know we're going to have an amazing conversation. Whether we can stick to the track, stick to the script and whatever, I don't really know. But hey, Jennifer, why don't we start with you and tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do, but not just within ASSP. Open the door and tell people a little bit about yourself.
Sure, happy to, Malc. I'll start. I'll start with who I am, and then I'll get into my role at ASSP. So I live in suburban Chicago. I moved here about 8 years ago. Was born and raised in Alaska for the most part of my life. Alaska took me to Washington, D.C. I grew up the child of a politician and truly thought my destiny in life was elected office. And then my mom moved us when she worked for a senator from Alaska. Which gets a little bit into my career and how I landed here at ASSP. But more important, so that's a bit about where I come from. I think that's a unique mindset in the United States to live on all coasts and now in the middle. I like to think that my lens is representative of the American population.
You must have a
Certainly,
lot of air miles.
yeah, certainly my experiences. From a pastime perspective, when not in the office, my husband and I are actually WSET certified, level 2 in wine. And this is a journey we started during COVID when my husband, who very rarely says, hey, let's do something, said, hey, let's get our wine certification. So we have been on a journey of exploration of the world's wines. Looking at climate influences, looking at geographic influences. And it's been
Wow.
really great. We probably will head towards level 3 and work harvest in Napa maybe next year. We're still figuring that out through. From a pastime, what else do I do? I love to play pickleball.
No way.
Yep. As an adult, I learned to play tennis when I moved here, and it was really a how do I go meet people? And I went from tennis to paddleball, which is a winter sport with heated courts in outside Chicago. I don't need that. To now pickleball. I belong to a club and have a great group of friends that we just, it's got a lot of open play. Just go put in your racket and out you get to play. And when I'm not doing that, I'm out on my bike or have my running shoes tied on and I'm out on the street. So half my life is
Oh,
solo time in my mind, my time on my bike and my time running is really when I do a lot of thinking and get crazy ideas. And the pickleball and the wine are all purely social.
so for level 3, do you need to come to France and go to some of
Uh,
the wine regions in France? I mean,
actually, so funny enough, Greg and I organized, we call it book club.
uh-huh. Book
Book
club,
club. We read
wine
labels.
club.
Yeah, we read labels, and we have a group that comes together once a month, and there's always a theme, and we actually do research. Everybody has to do research on their wine, and they get up and give a presentation. So my husband, back to coming to France, my husband and I have organized a group of 12 of us, 6 couples. And once a month or every other month, we get together with a theme. And I have toured France in the bottle, but I have not toured France.
Oh,
So that is on my list, absolutely on our
and
list.
just to really do the teaser a little bit further, you remember SOTI 2025?
Yes,
And you remember Carol Smets from Pernod
yes,
Ricard?
yes, yes.
Well, Mum's champagne is Pernod Ricard. Many of the main champagne in the Napa Valley, of course. Many of the champagne and the wine houses over in France are Pernod Ricard as well. So I can also see sort of like an industrial visit, meeting some major European heads of health and safety with a bit
I
of
will
wine.
say it is a manufacturing process.
It is.
So it would be good to understand the health and safety in that manufacturing process. I'm gonna take that home tonight. That's
I
my
think you should.
assignment today.
I think you should. I think you should. But
Hey, I got a guy.
who maybe? But
Yeah.
when we did SOTE 2025, and I'm going off track, off script here. Um, my team from North Florida Rock came up. They were up at SOTE, if you remember as well,
Hmm.
and we did an exchange with Pernod Ricard in the Mum's Champagne place in Napa Valley. It was absolutely amazing. And the technologies are quite different between cosmetics and wine. But when it comes to health and safety and the basics, guess what? Very similar.
Very similar.
What to share
I
about it
always
was
like to
amazing.
say, and I've said this a lot with skills and competencies, and 80% of what we all need is the same. We argue over the 20% difference. So
Oh,
good
I
to hear
love that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, that actually leads to kind of my career at ASSP. So
it does.
um, I mentioned I grew up in a political family, and I thought that often was my destiny. And my dad was a public servant, and I was in college actually the day and he left his role in the state house in Alaska, and his highest office was lieutenant governor. And I literally grew up campaigning on the streets of Alaska. And he called me and said, "Okay, I'm about to retire. You're going to come take my seat." And I was like, "Dad, I'm like a sophomore. What are you, crazy? No, I'm not." But I have always had that kind of, I would call it a pull to public service, which is critical to understand. So after college, I actually spent the first 10 years of my career in national politics and had a great opportunity to pick up many of the skills that you need to to balance agendas, to negotiate in between, and I'd worked as a high school kid on Capitol Hill. So a very different set of experiences, but everything that my father cared about and that I learned to care about giving back comes, and about negotiation and
Yeah.
about partnership and about collaboration and about putting people first, all came from, those skills from my first 10 years. I then moved and I often say I'm a bit of a unicorn. I've been in politics, the private sector, the public sector, now leading a nonprofit. From there, moved into really a consulting role as a partner in a company in which we helped bridge the public sector and the private sector. So all of a sudden, I was in a very different role in how you build partnerships between unlikely partners. And I think about that a lot when I think about OSHA. And is it a compliance function or is it an assistance function here in the United States? From that, actually moved into the hallowed halls of the U.S. Department of Labor, where I ran industry engagement across 14 sectors of our economy, including 3 presidential level initiatives that were, again, about partnerships, all about partnerships. From that into manufacturing. So you see this theme. Everything in my life has been about service, about middle
Yes.
skills, about competencies, about making the world a better place and doing it through people.
Mhm.
And from the US Department of Labor into manufacturing, had the great honor of leading the US's efforts around skill development and technical skills specific in manufacturing. And one day I got a call and said, "Hey, this organization, ASSE at the time, is
Yeah.
looking for a new CEO." And as a female executive in technical fields, it wasn't unusual to get calls. But in this particular call, it was the first time, and I always try to be helpful. I wasn't
Yep.
looking for something. But I went home that night and so I gave a couple names, you thought about this person, based on what you're looking for. And I went home that night and I said to my husband, I got a really interesting conversation today. I think I want that job. Like there is an element of everything from standards development to influential leadership to skill development to technical influence across every sector of the world and the world's workforce. And what more noble purpose than let's make the workplace a more safer place. So I went home that day and I thought about it, and the next day the recruiter called me back and said, we were talking about you. And and
On the
any
way.
yeah, any chance you might be interested? Because I almost never put myself in that mix. And I said, well, funny, absolutely. Yeah, I really am. And I had the job within 6 weeks.
No, 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
And
six
that
weeks.
was
And in fact,
2017, 2018.
2018. So my first interview was like May, June. And oh no, May, June, and like I had the offer signed, sealed, and delivered by the middle of July, and was meeting the team and started the middle of August. So I mean, it was an accelerated. I and I'm so grateful. I I I have such a passion
I can feel
for
it.
the responsibility that safety professionals have in the workplace. And every day, my team and I wake up and say, what is it we're doing today that makes their job easier? That is giving them access to information, that is supporting what it is they need to do because their scope of responsibility is significantly larger than their direct span of control. So it's not like they have to go out and make the case, and they have to go out and influence decision makers, and they're located all the way across an organizational structure. You know, every role is unique, and
Oh,
60% of them come from another discipline, and safety finds them, just like safety found me. So I,
oh
I,
wow.
I get to use a little bit of all of it. You know, I sit on ANSY's board of directors now as a contributing when I was, sitting on their committees 20 years ago. And it's such an honor. And I love what I do. And I love that what I do has meaning and purpose that I see every once in a while, but more important, that you don't see, because that's how safety needs to show up.
And I think you're right. I mean, there are a lot of safety professionals out there that are drawn. It gives them sense of purpose. The passion's there, and because sometimes it's one of the most difficult jobs that you can have in the world because nobody wants to know. It costs money, as people think, and so on and so forth. But and I think it helps if I can to have an organization like ASSP whereby the passion comes from the top as well. I mean,
Hmm.
because it just becomes contagious. ASSP has how many members now?
36,000 around the world. We certainly have predominance in North America, and we operate through a chapter structure. And we do
Mhm.
that very purposefully. We talk about engagement, and since I've walked in the door of ASSP, and I think this is so important for the community we serve and the profession we serve, is meet them where they are, period.
Yeah.
So chapter structures are about local networking. It's where jobs happen. It's where people come together. It's where you build local community and your network. We have common interest groups and practice specialties, the who you are, what you do. So where you live, who you are, what you do. Am I in manufacturing? Those are virtual communities where safety professionals across manufacturing can come together. And that really creates what is the biggest anchor in ASSP, which is that sense of, exactly as you've described, community experience. For each one, it is unique and different. And that's the way it should be. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that connection of experience. And that's incredible.
So as well, and I think the way through the chapters, if I can, I mean, my experience of bringing professionals together so they can share, they can network, and from that sharing, maybe just go and help save lives within their own organizations, inspired by those connections. I mean, it doesn't really
Yeah.
get any better, does it? And
Yeah.
and I'm thinking I'm gonna now. I know you have other passions as well, right? And everybody's watching this at the moment, thinking, what is strategic, related, futuristic, woo, significance doing there? What's that got to do with ASSP? Is it ASSP? Or is it something else to do with Jennifer McNelly? So, do you want to, where do these
Sure.
5 words come from? Come
So
on.
these 5 words up on my screen are actually my top 5 Gallup Clifton strengths. And they
Okay.
are a representation and a vocabulary that we use in our building and actually with safety professionals to help them become influential leaders. And in 2018, we launched a leader development program where all of our top leaders have been through CliftonStrengths. And when I think about the So when I joined here, so much of what we focused on was the technical side. We now have a pillar on workforce development, and workforce development is two components. It's how do you grow yourself, and how do you lead and influence within your company and your community? And you can't do that without enhancing the very strong technical skills safety professionals have to turn them into influential leaders. And the best way in which to do that is understand self, understand others, partner together. We're all not good at everything. So for the last 7 years, we've been using CliftonStrengths to help build their capacity and capability to be influential leaders, to understand, their own motivations, their own strengths, and then take that and say, okay, what do I see in my CEO? What does it mean he needs from me? And when we position it, there's a great structure on leadership that Gallup has. It's, there are 4 things followers need: trust, compassion, stability, and hope. How does a safety professional, from their lens, support those 4 things within an organization? And how do they position themselves as leaders that are not pushing themselves in, but they are flowing through to the needs of those they are serving? True servant leadership.
I mean, it's a totally different mindset. I mean, when you think about traditional health and safety of this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always do it, I am not flexible, this is the way we do risk assessments, whatever. To actually start to work on how do I influence people? How do I use my own strengths in order to move the needle a little bit through leadership, right? And through my strengths. And as a result, it opens up other opportunities for driving safety through the line at senior level or whatever.
Yeah.
I love CliftonStrengths, right?
Yeah.
But what does CliftonStrengths do with your weaknesses?
Okay, so first off, 2 things. I want to hit on that data point you just made because I just so happened. I said, what are these 5 words? I've been a Gallup CliftonStrengths certified coach for, I don't even know. I'm looking at the thing, 2016. I'm like, what does it say? What does it say? Since 2016, before I was even the CEO of ASSP, and I've used it in development programs, a lot around women in manufacturing, as an example. And the thing that didn't really click in me, Malik, which is so simple to me today, which culture matters in safety performance. And I like to say that culture eats strategy for lunch. And if you don't have a culture that supports psychological safety, that supports employee engagement, that respects the uniqueness of voice and creates an environment to have trust, compassion, stability, and hope, so it doesn't matter what your safety strategy is or what your policies and practices are. You need culture, period. You need the culture that supports lifting up safety, not safety as an afterthought. So in Gallup's data, Gallup's a data company. You actually have, through higher engagement, through using tools like CliftonStrengths, lower safety incidences. And the reason you do is because you're actually engaging employees in the conversation in a very different way, to your point. So that to me is really, really important on the data front. And then from that, how you build that into, I'm a big fan of global standards and ISO 45001. And that to me is kind of I often call it the utopian ideal for business engagement. But that anchors in the entire ecosystem using CliftonStrengths. And when I look at ASSP's journey in this, we didn't just start with the volunteers. We took the volunteers and the professional staff together on a journey. So the ecosystem and the next generation could all be engaged in the same process of changing mindset. And that to me is culture change.
And I love that as well. And I'm going to add something from my experience is that when you're on that kind of journey, you can absorb newcomers. People come in with different cultures, lower cultures. There's a little bit of adapting to the norm that they see the way everybody else is doing things around you. but it's easier for them to do. And even though your culture may go backwards because you've had some senior changes, like if you change your CEO, very often there's a change in direction, culture, whatever, and there is a change, and it can be negative, but it bounces back because of the capacity you've put in through working on culture. You know, you and I are often talking the same page, and we could go on for ages. And so, explain to everybody what woo is, because when you look at others, you can say, okay, I know what strategy is. Relate to, okay, I relate to something futuristic, yeah, significance, whatever, the why. Woo, what the heck is woo?
No, it's interesting. I get asked this question a lot when I'm at a Gallup event because relator and woo, that they are complementary. Relator is about deep social connections. I, as an individual, am naturally drawn to know you, to identify with you, to find common that binds us together. Full stop. That's woo has often been thought of as the exact opposite. As a individual, I show up in a room and I want everybody to feel a part of the party. I think about that when I show up at safety every single year. How do I stand at the front and smile at the people that walk in and make myself accessible so they feel welcome at safety? I stand there and I greet them and I help them, and I'm absolutely no help to the professional staff. But my responsibility is to be accessible. So woo stands for winning others over. That sounds like it really is I'm out to persuade the world, but it's really I'm out to make the world feel connected together. And I often have described it when I was asked by another coach is I'm a collector of connections. I have with woo, and actually significance comes into this too, as does strategic. With woo, I have the ability to make quick connections to those that I pass. And it could be an in passing, it could be a moment in time, it could be a post on LinkedIn. From that, where I see a link that helps the other, I make it. So I take it and I action it down. And I do that through, hey, have you met so-and-so? Do you know somebody that can, I don't know this person, but this person is going to solve your problem. So those two run in tandem together. Strategic has the ability to pull, people look at me sometimes like, where the heck did that come from? I'm like, well, this person did that, but like Kevin Bacon of connections and safety. But all of them flow together. And as a CEO, anybody can have these and show up. But to me, I call significance my rudder, Malk. I am a mission-driven CEO. I would not have this same passion, even if I had the same title, if money was the outcome.
Yeah. I feel that whenever I think about you or I talk about you, I talk about a person with a real sense of purpose, a real passion for what you do. And believe it or not, I have a very similar top 5 as well, believe it or not. But anyhow, that's good. Let me take you back in time a little bit to Berkeley and Safety on the Edge, SOTE 2025, where, thank you very much, ASSP were gold sponsors. It was great to have you on board and all the rest of it. But what are your biggest memories about SOTE, whether it would be memories from an overall point of view or individual presentations or something like that?
Yeah.
What do you remember?
So couple things, Malk. I can remember when I first looked at, I'll take myself on my own journey. Here's the agenda. Okay, what does this mean? What does it mean for ASSP? What does it mean for me as an individual? And let's send a member of my board, and then let's send me. So, there's that process every organization goes through when making decisions on how you spend time and resources. And I said, I want to go check this out. I want to go sit in the room with I love to be in a room with people that are so much smarter than me, because I can just sit back and absorb. And I could tell the impressive level of leadership that was being assembled for SOTE. So let's start with that. And it wasn't even just the headlines. It was the headlines and the networking and the who's in the room. So when I think about, and I know wow is probably the wrong term to use, but when I think about the experience, huge value for ASSP and professionally. The ability to just have formal and informal conversations, to sit in a room and to learn and to connect. It really facilitated that so well. And, I know the design behind safety on the edge was to look at the edge. And as somebody with high futuristic, bringing it forward. My problem is I live on the edge, my mind lives on the edge, and I'm always trying to bring it back. So personally, for me, it was about what is that edge and how do I bring that edge back home? So that, and I don't want to say safety's not lagging. Safety is leading. But we also always need, with the pace of change in the workplace, we always need to be pushing forward. And as somebody who wakes up and thinks about plan, do, check, act, and a process improvement, and I am always thinking about what's changing. Therefore, how do we push them? And that requires an element of regulation. But when you see it in action at SOTE, you then think, okay, now I know where to tell the team to go look. Now I know where to tell the board to go look. So it's starting to create steps in the journey to get to what I would call high performance safety.
Yeah. And sometimes you're right. I like the sort of the visualization of when you're driving a car and you're looking through that big windscreen. And you need that. It's big for a reason, because you're looking where you go forward, because that's where your strategy is, your vision, your design. But you still need that rear view mirror. You still need to look behind. You still need to make sure that things like the basic stuff, even down to the risk assessments or whatever, are done properly. You can't, whether it has value or not, you cannot ignore legal compliance, right?
Right.
Either.
It's the minimum,
so
right?
Absolutely. It's sort of the minimum, and you need to be aware of it. But on the other hand, with the way that life is changing, social media, VUCA world, and all the rest of it, people change. And I think the profession personally, and I know Corey feels the same, we feel that we need to give that information to the profession to realize that you have to become more aware about people being people, but you don't forget the basics either, the foundations, the fundamentals. So, which is pretty good. Was there a particular presentation by anybody that you remember?
So I was thinking a lot about this, and I will say it probably is influenced by both my corporate listening tour and my trip back to DC some time ago, where, and ASSP has taken stage for this too. So it is the role and importance of mental health and where that sits in the continuum. So there was a session with Georgia Bryce Hutchinson and Pam Molosky and others
Liz Horvath, I
yes,
think, as
thank
well,
you.
from Canada.
Yeah. So there was a session on mental health, and it was a, I'll say in my tenure as CEO, I've seen it go from the back burner conversation to front and center, and certainly COVID and stresses in the workplace influenced that. And I think it's important to continue that conversation. As I'm going through this year's corporate listening tour, so for those that are listening that don't know, every first quarter of every year, I get on the phone with industry executives, and to your point, what's going on in the world of, and I use NIOSH's framing: workplace, workforce. What is technology doing? What is this do? What is an impact in business? What are geopolitical for? All those sorts of questions. What I'm finding this year, Malk, and I think it's because of events like safety and events like safety on the edge, is I am finding that the discussions around mental health are becoming more normal. I was, one of my listening tours, somebody picked up their 988 chip, which in the US then gets somebody immediately to the help that they need. And we have staggering statistics in sectors like construction and the suicide rates. And And we're not all there yet. We're nowhere close to it. But the fact that it's getting main stage means we are going to continue to make it a part of the normal conversation. And then I think, okay, what does it mean for safety professionals? If they're in an environment in which compliance is their responsibility, well, this might be out of scope. This isn't what I'm taught. What do I mean? Okay, if we're looking at them as influential leaders, then understanding stress in the workforce, understanding the impact of turnover, understanding the impact of time and a half shifts in manufacturing and how long you can sustain that when you can't find people and it creates stress and da 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 da. Like I could go on and on and on and on and on.
Yep.
You need both. And the fact that we're normalizing it is going to make safety stronger.
I think I would definitely agree with you. And it's the conversation. It's like one conversation at a time, because I remember just before COVID, when we first started talking about mental health,
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, my first reaction was it's got nothing to do with health and safety professionals.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first reaction. And it was because, I'm going to say, the engineering, work on human factors and whatever. And then I realized that if people are not bringing themselves to work and they've got stresses from home or stresses even from work, then the mind is not on the job, or they're going to be forgetful, or they're going to be distracted, which means they're a risk to themselves and a risk to other people from an accident point of view. And that's even before we start thinking about mental workload, from going from, say, on mental non-workload, when you go to automation and all you do is watch lights and everything, was before you were very busy. Now you're pretty bored, right? I think it's a fascinating subject. So we could go on for ages, but we shouldn't do. But I think it has to be part of our toolkit now. But it doesn't mean that the health and safety professional has necessarily to drive it. I don't think it matters who drives it, but it needs to be, I think, driven in companies.
And that to me is again, I look at safety as an interdisciplinary function based on company culture. Funny enough, it comes back to culture. Where does safety sit? Who are the critical partners? Are they sitting within ops? Are they sitting direct to the CEO? Are they sitting within HR? It can pretty much be a lot of places in a business structure. Do they have environmental and health and safety? That creates a different set of expectations on skills and competencies. And that's really where ASSP tries to step in and fill the gap. How do we get them what they need, when they need it, where they need it? And interestingly enough, we're using AI to do some of that. And that's important because I do think the ability to make safety information from a trusted source accessible on the fly is what every professional needs. How do I take, if I haven't done this, back to that routine, non-routine, I haven't had to worry about this. If I need to go talk to the CEO, how do I pull the best from the brain trust that is those 36,000 members and make it accessible? That's kind of a big piece of where we're driving to make safety understandable, accessible, and most important, actionable.
And through that becomes influence and progress, and we save lives.
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't get any better. I was dreading this at SOTE, and I never knew what it was going to be like. But it was the panel that I chaired with you, Lorraine Martin from National Safety Council, and Larry Sloan from the AIHA, where we talked about ISF and the core principles and all the rest of it. What is the ISF and what are the core principles? Would you like to? I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody where the conversation, the panel one, but I absolutely loved that panel, by the way. Having the three of you on stage, it was electric and everybody loved it. But tell us a bit about ISF and the core principles.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll start with, so the ISF has now tried to come up with a name. So it stands for the Inter-Society Forum. And it is actually a group of CEOs in the safety space that have been coming together for a decade plus. We are renaming ourselves the Workplace EHS Coalition. So when somebody says, what the heck is it? Everybody can tell. Oh, look, it's a coalition of leaders. And we've
Nice.
been connecting for, again, I'll say long before I even arrived here. And the Inter-Society Forum and the Workplace EHS Coalition, the entire purpose is to share information and collaborate. So primary function number one, let's share information, let's look for opportunities to reduce redundancies, all those sorts of things. We do a lot of collaborative effort around advocacy. You know, certainly, and this is where the core principles come out. And I'll come back to that in 1 second. And then the third thing we do is expand reach. Every participant serves a different market in the safety space. And I love to say we're stronger together. ASSP has an anchor in our global consensus standards and our expertise on the body of knowledge and the functions that a safety professional needs to perform for workplace competitiveness and business competitiveness. So that's how ASSP shows up in the coalition. In the United States, transition happens. It frankly happens every 4 years. It's a statement of fact. And for decades, the ability to speak with one voice was a goal we had this year. So we came together and as a coalition, created what I would call the common voice from each organization's perspective. How do we walk into, and I often think, because one of my facilitators at a meeting said, when I walk into the hallowed halls of Congress, what am I saying safety needs? And then I can say, and here's what it means for the professional, and go into my own, I'll call it a stump speech, use my political terms. And there are 3 core principles that we have all agreed to will become part of that constant messaging. First and foremost is business-driven practices, standards, and worker well-being. So in times of a regulatory uncertainty, or I will say, when operating in a global environment, which most companies do, where expectations from county to county, state to state, and country to country vary, global consensus standards, specifically ANSI and ISO, set a framing that pulls a company up above that. So it is a business efficiency, operational structure that eliminates uncertainty at the business level. So yep. Recognition of consensus standards is critical, and part of that is also the role of the workforce. That's really important. Number 2, and certainly this is a theme more in the United States than in a lot of other countries, but put us on a continuum with others, which is embracing risk and safety management systems. So I like to say beyond compliance. It is not just about the law. I'm going to come back to that gap between the law and what business says is business practice. And there is a gap. So let's recognize it. Let's make sure we're doing everything we need to do here. And let's strive for here. For business operations, let's be operating up at the top. And let's use risk and management systems and the integration of safety into every decision. And I think of prevention through design. I know L'Oreal's practice is not let's start with the law and build up. It's let's start with the hazard and design it out. Yep. That's a big structural difference in which direction safety pulls in the marketplace. And then the last, and I am hopeful that some of the work ASSP is doing in this space is going to help do it, which is lagging indicators are a rear view mirror that don't solve safety challenges. So if we are looking to the future, how do leading indicators influence and impact? So back to design it out, get policies out, design it out, all those sorts of things. So we really do think in the record keeping that there's a role and function for lagging indicators. It's a statement of fact. What we need to be, what we record, how we record, and we can get in debates around that through a number of our consensus standards, operating environments. But let's start to get to leading indicators. And I do believe with some of the work ASSP is starting to do, working with partners, that I'm hopeful we'll get to rationalizing a set of core leading indicators, leading to back to that 80%. There's a lot of work through our standards committees around leading indicators. And I do think there are probably core indicators we could rationalize to. And then every company is going to have their cultural indicators that are going to be important to them. And that's okay. Back to that, let's see if we can't solidify the 80% and allow for the 20% application. And I hear that from global companies and domestic companies all the time. So those are really the three principles, and they're in place. So each one of us as an organization can lean in and lead forward from what we do best.
Oh, totally. And I like the discussion about the importance of the leading indicators. Lagging indicators are always going to be with us, as you said, because sometimes, like the OSHA, the regulators, they very often, and even the external stakeholders, they request from our boards and everything.
Yeah.
Lagging indicators. The leading indicators is quite funny because I know I've looked with a number of industries, companies about what they do, and the most successful ones use leading indicators to drive process that will produce the outcome.
Yes.
But the challenge then is because it's all homegrown, is that the leading indicators very often are different between the companies, but they tend to be part of similar families: leadership, training, employee engagement. But that's another. We could go down a rabbit hole here, but maybe we shouldn't.
Well,
We
I
shouldn't
will
do that.
say, Malk, so when I started 8 years ago, ASSP had spent almost a decade of investment in let's get it into corporate reporting. And again, back to that strategic and futuristic, we have always been ahead of the market space. And we have very little control over Wall Street and boardrooms, but we need to have influence there. And what I'm really excited to see is the journey and push that we've continued to make through things like the Capitals Coalition, is that I'm going to use, people-centered safety, use that term, is beginning to influence and starting to show up. So I'm just starting back to my corporate listening tour. I've had several global companies say to me, we now have them. They're going to show up in next year's report. And that to me is inspiring, that the hard work is being done to get to the answers, to make them unique. And, I look at things on a maturity curve. Somebody has an idea, it norms, it becomes a regulation. When it norms enough, there's law. And then when it norms enough, there's standards. And then when it norms enough, you get to the next level. And it all comes back again. The second something gets out there, somebody's improving it. So the more momentum we have and we were on the early adoption curve, I think through the financial markets and through the leadership of sectors, including, manufacturing and others. I always go back to my manufacturing roots. We're seeing that it's going to start to impact and push. Through the safety supply chain, if you want to call it that.
Totally. And I think also to add to that, and I think it's okay not to be a long way down the system. It's if you're on the journey, doesn't matter where you are in the journey, providing you realize you're on the journey and where you're going, kind of thing, where you want to go. I mean, I think very often a lot of organizations get too wrapped up in benchmarking with the best of the best, and sometimes that gap is too much, and you don't enter into the journey. So it's one of those kind of things. So how I think you've slightly answered this question, but how is ASSP changing in order to promote these principles, these core principles? Is there a change happening?
Absolutely.
How is it being integrated into who you are? Your values.
Absolutely. And I will say, when we think about our values, that workplace health, safety, and well-being is an inherent right for every worker. That's the dot on the wall. Yeah. And everything we do is part of that North Star in guiding forward. And I'll start first with the core of the people. We within our community have two really, really important commitments. One of them is that sense of community and belonging. And I failed to mention this earlier, but safety professionals, you, Malk, included, I've seen it in action. You are the most giving professionals. You do not and never want to gate a life. Therefore, creating a platform in which problems are solved through the mind trust of professionals is part of community, period, full stop. That's how we accelerate that mind share. We've spent a lot of time, even with the redesign of safety as our biggest event, or safety focus as another event, how we create community to allow those in-person connections to foster the same thing, so that when you walk away, I got a guy, I got a gal, I know who to call at any point in time. You're never alone. And every safety professional needs to know that. So that's number one. Number two really gets into the career development. We've already talked that the role of work is changing. And I'm no doubt they're not keeping up with the technical skills. It's changing the definition of leadership and safety to include the leadership components. When I started, interestingly enough, the term was, oh, they need business acumen. Okay, let's teach them accounting. Let's teach them how to read a P&L. That is not it.
No.
It's about being an influential leader and understanding business objectives and translating that into operational excellence. So we are very focused on that. And we look at it as the journey of a safety professional. When somebody steps into it, what they know, versus somebody that's 5, 10, 20 years into the career, we need to meet them where they are. So the ability to make learning accessible at the point of need is another shift that is happening organizationally. It may happen at the company level and how we make training and information available. And it may happen at the individual level with tools like Safety Tracker, where, oh yeah, I got the handbook and I don't remember what, but let me pop in a question and know which PhD wrote the answer for safety. So there's that continuum of customization to make learning, and that goes to Professional Safety Journal and everything we put out. Make it a useful tool, because to your point, no matter where you are in the journey, there's always another step forward. So
Always.
Creating information that way. And the other really important component of that is making information accessible and trusted. Come right back to Gallup's trust, compassion, stability, and hope. What I do know about the members and professionals we serve is they trust each other, because they walk that walk, they've walked that journey. So how do we make that information accessible, citable, and reachable? And that's really where our position as a trusted advisor comes in. There's a lot to be done around our standards-based expertise. Again, we spend, with our partners that help development, $7 million a year convening to define what best practice looks like. Then how do we make it applicable from small to large, whether you're at the front end or the back end of this journey? So under our trusted advisor advocacy efforts, a big piece of it is making information accessible and trusted. And then that's how we show up on the policy and global stage. We won't apologize for the rigor that we require, because that is what safety professionals culturally expect. But we need to make it accessible and easy to understand and access. So those are three big components that have shifted how we look at what we do and our responsibility in serving the safety profession.
Yeah, and the thing that sort of come to me as well when you were just saying that is that, going back to the journey, the strategy, the vision, and all the rest of it, the commitment, the passion that people have, in order to develop those professionals, it almost needs to make it personal, because we're all on a different journey, we're all in a different place, we're all in a different position, right? We could say that. I mean, how is that going to happen? Because it's not one size fits all. I mean, is this through mentoring, through more coaching, through CliftonStrengths, going back to CliftonStrengths? I mean, because it's developing the individual and the capacity. Because and then I'm giving you time to think about this, because this was not on the list. I mean, I actually think very often I'm not really in health and safety. I'm in sales and marketing. Anyhow, what do you think? How do you make it personal?
How do you make it personal? So in 2020, so this is how long we've been working on this. We're not there yet, but in 2020, the board of directors launched an effort around our education to I call it mass customization to the individual. That is how we have started to design content, restructure our credentialing components. And one of the things I am so proud of is the repositioning of ASSP's foundation in this journey. So when I started, it really was, and I do not discount this, this is a really important component, but it really was a scholarship program for the best students. That's who was kind of getting the money. And we removed barriers to access. And what we know is early career professions, first off, they're professionals. They need help and support. How do we make resources available to them? And then there are those in formal academic programs. So we split the thinking. It's not one or the other, it's both, and they have different needs. And then the other thing that we've started to do, and this has been really focused effort, the redesign of content. How do you organize it towards a business function? So things like risk, or versus here, come take a course. How do I put myself, if my company's on a risk journey, how do I put myself on that journey to get the learning I need on that front? And what are the support mechanisms? And then repositioning all other content to feed into, because content is just not a course, Malk. Content is everything we produce. So that alignment across core functions that we know, we've mapped. I got the safety superhighway. And it includes risk and safety management and compliance and ISO 45001 and total worker health. And depending on where you are in that career, what you need is very, very different. So being able to start to funnel, we don't need more content. We need content funneled to the point of access. And that is our digital transformation efforts. The board, tools like Safety Tracker. We didn't need to rewrite a 1,000-page manual that has in its 5th edition. What we needed to do was apply AI and say, here's the answer, here's the source, what else do you need? So that technology is now accelerating the ability to meet the learner where they are. That's one half of the equation. The other half of the equation, so we need to grow them. And the other thing we've done on the foundation side, and this is important, is begin to ungate content to early career professionals. We don't need to make money off those that don't have, we got to keep the lights on and we got to be able to pay the staff. No mission, no margin, no mission, so to speak. But ungate it to those that need it the most, that have the least support within a company. So all that is the repositioning of the foundation to be able to support those people. We're now in this, headed into the end of the first year of direct career coaching for safety professionals through the foundation. So back to those CliftonStrengths, we're making coaching available for them. And then the other side of that is based on where their company sits, let's help them apply it in the company environment. So that gets to company maturity. Where is the company on their journey? And how do you translate what you know into that maturity curve, from compliance to risk to management systems to human performance to ISO 45001? So that's a rubric.
It is. And also with that kind of approach, which I absolutely sort of love, because it's not just about, you've got to keep the lights on, as you say, but it's not just about that, right? It's driven by the purpose. And the majority of serious accidents and deaths and fatalities happen in the smaller companies, right? Or in companies in developing worlds. And they're the ones that can't afford, the membership, or the mentoring and the coaching. And any way we can help them has got to have a positive impact. So I'm totally on that. We could go on for ages and ages and ages and ages. I mean, and I've not even spoken about SOTE 2026 in May in Baltimore. And there, I'm going to say a big thank you to ASSP, because you've come in this year not as gold but as a platinum sponsor, which is absolutely going to be great. And you're going to be on stage, and we're not going to talk much about that if you don't mind. But I just love the way you captivate the audience. I could listen to you all day, and I'm supposed to be hosting this podcast, right? And it's absolutely good. But why? And I think maybe you've answered this before. But why did you decide to sponsor SOTE for a second year? I mean, I'm very happy and proud, but why?
That's a really good question, and we've spent a lot of time considering. And we look at our partnership with SOTE as part of our presence, advocacy, and reach, all part of being a trusted advisor in that space. And I'll come back to what I said earlier. Wow, I want to be able to sit in the room with those that are sitting on the edge and translate that back into day-to-day operations, because the majority of the membership that we are serving and the companies we are supporting isn't sitting on the edge. So if there is one idea or two ideas that we can translate back, we're making a difference every single day. So it's about the alignment of SOTE to our vision. Workplace safety, health, and well-being is an inherent right. So let's get there and let's continue to push the envelope. So that to me is what I would call, I'm going to call it mission alignment for that.
Yeah.
The other is, and I mentioned this earlier, I love to be in a room with smart people. Malk, you included in there. I'm not a safety professional, and I'm a sponge, and I absorb, listen, and learn. And having the opportunity to do that with people on the edge, pushing the envelope, means we can tap into them for whatever. It is about the relationships and the connections. It's also about, I'll come back to the core principles and the link between stronger together. It's much like our own safety conference, you leave feeling like you've just spent a day with people that are slogging through just like you are. And that has motivation, and it's a catalyst for innovation to continue to happen. And then I think it's also important that we bring our expertise. We learn and we give, and we show up at SOTE to learn and to give, to invest back into the community, to push the envelope and support that direction, and in every way we can. Back to that, we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Nope.
We need rocket fuel and a different trajectory. So that all of that then comes out of how we all get to go back home, not leave it behind, but take the best of it to then influence what we get to do for the next 12 months. So really excited to be a part of the community, and that ASSP sees value in what's going on and why it's going on, and why we want to be in the room and lead in the room, both together. Learn and give.
And I know that's exactly what Corey and I mean, we had the idea originally was, I don't know if you know, was just to do a little sort of 1 hour presentation together at I think it might have been at Safety or something like that, and then it just grew into a bigger idea. But the other thing that we're liking to do is the fact that we're trying to break the silos as well by bringing the people together, like the importance of process safety. Very often an occupational safety professional doesn't look at process safety, but when process safety goes wrong, we get major explosions, right? And things like that. So we're looking forward to ASSP being with us. I'm looking forward to you being on stage as well, as you know. And I think going to Baltimore is a nice place. I've never been to Baltimore before. Have you been to Baltimore?
I have. The Inner Harbor is beautiful. Baltimore is a city, much like Chicago, of neighborhoods and communities. So I love Baltimore.
So hopefully, I think for anybody who's listening to this, if they want to come along, it's the 5th, if I remember right, it's the 5th and 6th of May in Baltimore. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But I'm not going to let you go without bringing the whole discussion back to Jennifer McNelly and who you are and what makes you tick and all the rest of it. But my last question to you is a little bit strange. I'm going to let you turn back time. You can go anywhere you want back in time. Can't go forward, back in time. You can meet anybody that you want or be at any particular moment in time. Where would you like that I send you?
I got two.
Okay, you can have two.
Two and linked, but they all come back to the same thing. And actually, Malk, each year I pick a word, and this year's word is stewardship. That is my mantra this year. Last year, my word was courage. So, and I'm going to talk about that. And when I think about my responsibility as ASSP's CEO, and I think about me and kind of what we've talked about and how I'm built and my strengths, all that, I think about the importance of courageous leadership.
Mm.
It's really hard. It's really lonely. It's really scary. You make yourself vulnerable to a whole host of things. And as a leader, the courage to do the right thing, not the easy thing, is hard. But it's not something I shy away with. But sometimes I need to hold it in my hand and remember that I do have the fortitude to persist and to lead boldly because I am responsible for this incredible organization, which gets into stewardship. But when I think about it from a historical perspective and what has defined the greatness of this country and my anchor into service, there are 2 points of history that I would go back to. One is the Declaration of Independence, because that truly was courage. And this is a beautiful blended country that has at the heart of its systems the tension between federal state and that Puritan work ethic and everything that I love about, tension isn't good or bad, it is. And that's okay, because it's a reflection of who we are as a nation and the courage to create new and think different. And the second would be the Gettysburg Address. Wow. Yeah. And I often, when I'm back in DC, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a runner, and I often stay in the Hill. And if my shoes allow, I will run down to the Lincoln Memorial, and I will stand in awe of the buildings that surround us. And interestingly enough, I had this same question come up when I was in Ireland and walking through the memorial for the potato famine. And I thought, would I have had the courage if I was hungry to not take the soup? And every day, I want to make sure that I have the courage. So that's where I'd go. And I hope that I would be who I am today with the courage that I think safety needs.
Wow. Jennifer, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you for being you.
Thank you.
And opening up. And I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. And not just because you opened up and went into the detail of ASSP and the values of community, etc., but you brought yourself to the table. And I just absolutely love you for that. And this has been a fantastic, fantastic podcast. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for being here with me. I'm a rookie at this game, and I just so privileged just to be here. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next at SOTE 2026 in Baltimore. So Jennifer, thank you very much.
Thanks, Malk. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm always inspired and motivated by our conversations. I truly appreciate you. Thank you for all you do for safety.
Thank you very much. Thank you.